Joe talks about Joe. And now, your host, Joe Slepsky.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Joe on Joe. It's me, your host, Joe Slepsky, and we're back this week to have another episode of Joe on Joe Illustrated, and we're talking about G.I. Joe in 3D. I want to welcome all you new listeners, all you old listeners. Remember, this is the podcast where we've covered every episode of the Sunbow Show, the DIC show, even Extreme. We've done it all. At least, all up to like 1990, whatever, 4 or 5, whatever that is. There's a big mid-90s hurdle I need to get over and make it really, it's like a mental block I have. I don't want to jump to like Spy Troops and all that stuff. I still want to live in the 80s, still want to live in the 90s. I'm admitting that here. But that's because, frankly, there's still great stuff to cover. I don't want to go too far because, like this week, we're covering G.I. Joe in 3D, which is a great comic book and, needs to be covered. So we'll eventually get to that other stuff. But until then, we're talking today, G.I. Joe 3D issue number 2. And if you want to say hello, you could find me on social media. At Joe and Joe Pod. You could say hi on Gmail, joeandjoepod@gmail.com. If you want to help support the show, you can go to Patreon, patreon.com/Joe on Joe, and help the show there. And, reach out and say hi. You could also help the show by saying hi to our sponsors, the Movies and a Meal podcast.
In the beginning of time, the smallest organism gained sentience and thought to itself, I really need a good meal. Then, a bunch of other stuff happened, and finally the Lumiere brothers started showing movies in France. This was all the inspiration that fellow broadcasters Brad, Keith, and Ben needed to combine these two primal needs into the Movies and a Meal podcast. The Movies and a Meal is one of the most casual and relaxing film talk podcasts you could ever listen to. These three friends enjoy a good meal together while talking all about the movies. And not just reviews, they do favorite lists, comparison discussions, genre talks, anything and everything that you can think of. They've even broken their solemn promise inherent in the name and branched out into TV talk. So I love the variety of films they bring to the table. They cover new releases, classics, cult films, often in one episode. It's really a delight to listen to, and it has something for every movie fan out there to enjoy. So if you're looking to grow your podcast library, if you eat meals, and if you've ever seen a movie, then you should give Ben, Keith, and Brad a listen and subscribe to the Movies and a Meal podcast. They've been a great sponsor to this show. I love the Movies and a Meal podcast, and I'd like all of you to love them too.
Before we dive into G.I. Joe in 3D number 2, just hours ago, Clutch showed up on my doorstep in his vamp, his classified vamp, classified Clutch. That thing's a beast. It's awesome. I love it. So excited. I know a lot of you guys are starting to get yours this week. There's a bunch of other stuff shipping too. I think it was, what are they calling them? Like the non-G.I. Joe soldiers, like the Navy SEAL and something like the regular like tribute to U.S. Army soldiers are shipping this week as well. A bunch of other stuff. I guess they announced freaking Blowtorch, which is my guy. They announced Blowtorch and they announced Road Pig this week, I think. So thanks to our friends over at What's on Joe Mind, you alerted me to that. That was very exciting. So good times to be collecting G.I. Joe. And 1987 was a really good time to be reading about G.I. Joe because G.I. Joe from Blackthorn Publishing in 3D was on the shelf. And I will say this, very much like last week's book, it's same creative team. It's really good. Same, also broad stroke thing. It also suffers the pacing issue, where it stretches out a lot of scenes. And that's just me making a broad stroke opinion on it. There's a lot of really well drawn and actually well dialogued scenes that just don't have a lot of action. If you as we go through this, if you think about all the things that actually happen, there's really not enough to support the length of this story. Like you could have come up with a few more, we'll say action beats or, plot twist beats. And I think the story would have improved quite a bit. Having said that, as I was reading this, it dawned on me that this style really is more early 2000s Bendis-y what were they? What are they? When we stretch out scenes and it's just all talking heads, it's like the new Avengers stuff and all the pretty much everything Bendis has done. Um, Not elevated storytelling. Yeah, I'm blanking on the name. It's good. The word, it's going to come to me, or maybe it won't. But you guys know what I'm talking about. Where the comics went from kind of like really fast cut, short scenes, saying a lot of dialogue during punches to this slow talk, slow walk, lots of conversation, lots of talking head scenes, culminating in the recent X-Men Krakoa era where they literally have boardroom scenes, which is boring as heck. But a lot of people really saw that with Bendis's early arrival. So like 15 years ago or something like that, with his new X-Men stuff, his Ultimate Spider-Man stuff, and the phrase is on the tip of my brain. I'm so sorry if I think of this. I will probably blurt it out right in the middle of something else entirely. But basically, it stretches these scenes out. The difference with that style and what I think this issue is a little suffering from is that style focuses more on punchy dialogue and, more like realistic character banter, think of dialogue like out of a Tarantino movie or a Kevin Smith film and parlay, kind of translate that into what a comic book would be like. This issue of G.I. Joe 3D has those scenes, but I don't think it has the dialogue to support it. It's well written, and I do mean that. It's just the dialogue is more utilitarian. It's more, let's get from A to B, instead of a lot of times when we're talking about that Tarantino or Kevin Smith style of writing, it's more it's more off to the side, right? So you're wrenching on a car, but you're not talking about wrenching on the car, right? You're talking about something else entirely different. Sometimes it's a metaphor for wrenching on the car, sure, but other times it's literally you have two people doing one thing, but they're really talking about some other thing, and it may be maybe inconsequential what they're talking about, but it's but it's kind of fun banter. Maybe there's a couple jokes, builds on the characters, shows these character moments. That's the kind of writing that I think is missing from this, frankly, because it wasn't the style at the time. Not by any stretch of the imagination were comics being made like that back then. Absolutely, there was character being put into them, but they weren't being written for those dialogue scenes, dialogue moments. When you got those, they were kind of few and far between and stood out. It's still in that literal dialogue frame of this is what's happening in the panel, where you're using the dialogue to kind of explain some of the action instead of this, we'll call it Bendis style that I'm talking about, where there really is no action. There's very little action, and it's just more using the dialogue to carry the plot, but sometimes just the characterization, and sometimes just there to get out a fun conversation. When it's done well, it does both, right? It gets both fun character stuff, and it moves the plot along a little bit, but there's usually very little action involved there. Comics at this time, and going back for a long time, was you had a lot of that character stuff in between a fist being thrown, and the joke was always, how can you get that much dialogue in between a fist? And you couldn't, but you can in a comic book. So this book has a lot of those nothing moments, but kind of nothing dialogue, if that makes sense. And I don't mean that as an insult. I mean that as it's a form that hadn't really come to fruition yet. So I think this was a little bit of ahead of its time in that way. So I genuinely mean that as a weird compliment. I don't know if that's what they were going for. I don't know. But it definitely just stretches out a little bit. Kind of like my over explanation of this for the last 3 minutes. You guys get the point. One final thought is I literally had to stop recording and Google this because it was bothering me that I couldn't think of it. I'm talking about compressed and decompressed storylines. That's what I'm talking about. That decompression that has been popular predominantly in the early 2000s and is still there a lot. But I think they're finding a nice middle ground. It's that decompression where you're taking beats and moments that would have just been one or two panels and you're stretching those into pages oftentimes. And then overall, a story can get decompressed to fit, to fit the number of issues you need for a trade, not necessarily doing what's best for the individual issue itself to pace that issue or to pace the overall story, but to say that, oh, we need 6 issues, so we need to, decompress it a little bit. That's what I'm talking about. So thank you for putting up with my brain cramp. So great book, great cover, actually really nice cover. It's the Defiant, and the Joes are on a, I've never had a Defiant, so I'm actually not intimately familiar with it, but there were cannons. Yeah, I flipped a little bit. There were cannons on the Defiant, so the Joes are manning the cannons on the Defiant. It looks like a version of Mainframe. It's not exactly Mainframe, but it's a version of Mainframe. Sergeant Slaughter's in the cover, even though he's not in the book, and Tunnel Rat's on the cover, even though he's not in the book. And it's actually, that looks to me like it's supposed to be Duke, even though he's also not in the book. And you know what? I take that back. That's not Mainframe. That's is that Payload? That's one of the astronauts. So there's only one guy on the cover that's actually in the book. But the Defiant is, and it looks great. Nice use of like red and orange and yellow to kind of pop the cover in the right places. I dig it. And they're shooting off to the side. You can look it up. G.I. Joe #2 in 3D from Blackthorn Publishing.
Yo, Joe!
So we start with something that is, I don't want to look ahead too much, but it's a plot point that goes nowhere in this issue. And then I did look ahead to the next issue and think, oh, well, they must pick this up in issue #3. And they never pick this up in issue #3. So after this recording for next week, I may have to Google this to see if they ever resolve this. There is a mysterious figure in the shadows. He is called the Supreme One, and he is totally in shadows. And he's got a bunch of dudes who, they kind of look like they're in Cobra uniforms, but not really. But they're in Cobra-esque uniforms, and they say, the test may begin at any time. He says, excellent. And there is a weather satellite that is arcing gently over the equator. And this dude in the shadows says, begin override, give me control. And he takes control of this satellite. Now, who this dude is, I don't know. It could be Destro, quite frankly. I don't know if that's who it's supposed to be, but of the people at the time with the resources of the time, someone to have their own kind of crew of, dudes working for him. Destro seems the likely fit, but I don't know what they were doing with this, and I don't know if we're going to find out. So maybe tune in next week, and I'll do a little more digging.
Yo, Joe!
Well, he presses a button, and that satellite launches a missile. And so that wasn't really a weather satellite. It was some kind of satellite in disguise. And we find out that it's a Cobra satellite. And it just launched a missile at the planet Earth. And not just the planet Earth, it launched it at Cobra Island. What's neat about this is I believe it's supposed to be a Techno Viper that's talking to Commander. He says malfunction in our number 4 weapons satellite. So, no spoilers. This satellite doesn't make it out of this adventure. That means they have at least 3 other satellites up there, which I kind of like, because as you see, things happen. The satellite doesn't survive, and the Joes are like, "We did it, but really, did you?" Because they've got 3 other satellites. That's a fun little detail that I like. And yeah, this missile heads towards Cobra Island, and this is Cobra Island, traditionally seated in like that Gulf of Mexico region. I get the vibe that this is absolutely the Cobra Island that is like from the Hama stuff, where it's legally represented. We'll see later. There's some talk of that. So it's kind of like their own nation state. And it's Cobra Commander in the his battle gear. So I don't know if this means it's Cobra Commander, or if it is Fred Cobra Commander, like Fred Mander. Because remember, in the comic book at least, Cobra Commander real CC never wore that outfit. That was all Fred. Every time you saw that was Fred. And when Cobra Commander came back for real, he just wore his normal stuff. I don't know if they're doing that in these 3D books. Obviously, they don't tie the continuities together at all. So I'll call him Cobra Commander, but just so you listeners know, I get it. This technically should be Fred, but I'm not going to hold that against him at all by any stretch of the imagination. So he's they're all freaking out because this missile's going to hit.
Yo, Joe!
And it certainly does. The next page is the splash page, and quite the splash it is. It's a really nice 3D effect. It's got G.I. Joe in 3D as the logo, and it's called The Final Frontier, which is great for a space story. It's got the story by John Stevenson, pencils E.R. Cruz, inks Adrian Morrow, letters David Cody Weiss, and the 3D process was done by the Fearless Fritches. This explosion is fun and it works, and it's got a great sound effect, like kafroom over top. It's not blowing up anything recognizable. So there's just kind of like some weird bunker that's just exploding. So it 100% works, but it's not like we're seeing a terror drone blow up. That would have been really cool to see, like a terror drone in 3D exploding. That would have been neat.
Yo, Joe!
So now this is where we start, like a couple pages of that decompressed storytelling that I was talking about earlier. I read this in 3D already, so I'm going to take my 3D glasses off because, again, like last week, it's hard to read this and record because I'm an old man. So we're at the Kennedy Center, Space Canaveral, Florida, and they've noticed that there's a giant explosion on Cobra Island. It's the Joes. Mainframe's there. There's a general there, and I don't know if it's General Flake. They don't really name him, but he is talking to Hawk, and it's Mainframe and Dial Tone are there. They're the ones that noticed the explosion. They haven't heard anything from him. Cruz does a nice job with setting the atmosphere here. There's a lot of 3D effects with just dudes standing around. The general like pops over them, and in choosing how to draw it by making him in the foreground, he just looms larger, as more of an authority figure over these guys. And you throw in the 3D effect, it works really nice. They're also just surrounded by random comic book computer equipment, so that's fun. And they need answers.
Yo, Joe!
Again, not much going on here except they're kind of chatting about stuff like, we don't really know much here, but turns out there is someone at the door. So we take a whole page to kind of set up there's someone here gag, which is okay, but this gag could have absolutely fit on this previous page. That's what I'm talking about with the decompressed and compressed storytelling. The gag is you get to the end of this page, and this is good storytelling as far as comic books go. Don't get me wrong, because you want this reveal to have a setup on this page, and then you flip the page and you want that reveal. Maybe they were doing it because they were looking for page counts. That might be the case, but it seems that they have visitors, right? He doesn't tell General Hawk. He's just going to let it be a surprise. And here we go.
Yo, Joe!
Now, it's an over-the-shoulder shot of Cobra Commander, and he says, "Gentlemen, good of you to see us on such short notice." For my money, this is not a great intro for that gag. You got the camera on Hawk and the General's faces and it's over the shoulder Cobra Commander. You easily could have done like half a splash where the Hawk and General are bracketing left and right, and they see Cobra Commander walk in. They had a great intro to Cobra Commander in the last issue. Remember, like he stood up out of that chair and he was all like, "Arr!" That was really cool. That style of intro could have been used here. I think it loses some of the punch when you went to all the effort of setting it up on the previous page. So it was great setup, and I think the landing they missed a little bit here. But it's Cobra Commander and a bunch of Techno Vipers. Hawk's pretty upset, which is, there's a part of me that goes that Hawk's got to be upset because literally the General 30 seconds ago could have given him a warning, but it's like the General purposely kept it from him just so he could see the reaction. That's kind of funny. But Cobra Commander is the one saying that they have a crisis, and this is where he brings in his lawyer. He says his lawyer will elaborate. The lawyer's name is Hindman.
Yo, Joe!
Now, there's a big dialogue dump here. There's a lot of text here. And this is all exposition that we know that it just takes up a lot of space for something that the reader already knows. But he says, in a nutshell, and then proceeds to not be in a nutshell. Our weather satellite experienced a minor malfunction, the result of which was a piece of jettisoned. Said piece impacted was a piece was jettisoned. Said piece impacted Earth on Cobra Island. We have received information that your government is entertaining the idea of removing our satellite from space. I have a federal restraining order restricting any interference with Cobra property. You will not impede our efforts to correct the malfunction in any way. They're doing a couple of things there. He is saying the lawyer is lying, saying that it was like a jettison piece instead of a missile, because they don't want to admit that it's a missile in the sky. So I get that, and that's fun. And I love the lawyer part. Like, that's great. And that's the part that makes me think this is the established universe where they're a legal entity. Extensive Enterprises filed the stuff with like the United Nations and all that stuff. So I really dig that a lot. Just feels like the pacing's off. The general gets very upset about this in the implications that they're going to impede Cobra's effort to correct the situation. But while they're yammering, we cut back to this mysterious dude that says, he says, initiate phase 2, and someone presses a button. I think these mysterious cutaways, because they happen a couple more times, I do think they need a little caption that says elsewhere, or meanwhile, or on the other side of the world, something like that, just to denote for us that it's shifting gears, because there's really, especially without color, and I think we touched on this last time, there was really nothing to denote the shift from where they're arguing at Cape Canaveral to wherever this is with this mystery guy.
Yo, Joe!
So now another missile is fired from that Cobra satellite. And this time, it looks like the general is screaming about it. All personnel red alert. They're saying, "Oh, is this another malfunction, Cobra Commander?" And basically calling him on his bluff. And they're trying to figure out where this is going to land. And Mainframe's got an answer for Hawk. He says, point of impact is projected to be downtown New York. That's quite shocking.
Yo, Joe!
Oh, it's General Johnson. That's interesting. So that's the first time we've heard his name. I don't know who that is. I don't recall the General Johnson. But he's asking about their like the missile interception systems that the U.S. government has, and he's asking, like, what's up? So they're gonna get launched, and they're gonna track that missile. Cobra Commander is screaming about it. That missile belongs to Cobra. Hawk says, "Send me a bill." And then while he says that, we then cut to that mysterious guy saying phase 3. So again, suffering a little bit from being in full black and white. However, I got some thoughts about the black and white I think are used really well in this issue.
Yo, Joe!
Safely miles above Earth, we had another big explosion, and the Joes are cheering. So they were able to intercept that missile heading for downtown New York City. Hawk says, "This has gone far enough. We're knocking your satellite out of the sky. That's what we're doing." Now, Cobra Commander says, "I think we need to talk." So after a hurried discussion, Cobra Commander now says, "Very well, we agree with your assessment. However, since it is Cobra property, we will join you in the retrieval mission." So Cobra Commander says we need to talk, but we never really see what the heated discussion is. And then, so it's a little awkward. I love that he shoehorns his way onto it. That makes sense. I just don't know what the need to talk was, because Hawk's like, "We're going to blow it up." And so now it becomes we're going to retrieve it mission. And what did Cobra Commander say? I don't really know. That's a little dodgy. Nice 3D work on this page. You've got Cobra Commander layered, Hawk layered, and there's even a computer layered, and then the general, and then another dude behind him. I can't really tell who the dude is. It's a little far back, but it's a nice little panel there. And this is where the general whispers, Hawk whispers. That means letting them on the Defiant. So they're just going to have to be cagey and keep an eye on them. And meanwhile, Cobra Commander whispers to those Techno Vipers, this is a golden opportunity to get our hands on the Joe's latest technology. So let's use it. Now, I'm saying Defiant. Cobra actually doesn't know what the Defiant is yet, and we're going to learn that in the next few pages.
Yo, Joe!
So now we're with Lift Ticket in a Tomahawk flying over. Are they in a desert? It's kind of some water there. It's a South Florida peninsula, and the tension inside the copter is only slightly thicker than the humidity outside. And it's Cobra Commander. It's Hawk and his battle fatigues, and they're heading towards this kind of middle of nowhere facility base. So this is another, like, they're taking their time to get there. Gives us good 3D stuff, gives us good, like a lot of atmosphere here. But it's just literally like showing them take a cab, which I think we could, like, you can get there a little faster.
Yo, Joe!
Top panel, got a nice one of the Tomahawk. The guy's unloading off the Tomahawk. And what I like about this is, you remember how the front window of the Tomahawk opened? They've got that open on this toy, so that's pretty cool. It looks weird, but I'm not going to hold that against them. It's pretty cool. So they've got the front window open. It's like they're exiting through that. Meanwhile, we only needed the front window to open to get the guy in the seat, to get Lift Ticket in the seat. We didn't, like, no one would actually exit out that front window, I guess, unless you were jumping out because you were going to die. But that's pretty hilarious that they've got the window open. But it looks good. Like, the vehicles all look great, especially on this page. We get a really nice shot of the Defiant. Looks great in 3D. All the layers of it are in different levels of 3D, with like the actual space shuttle, and then the booster rockets, and then the launch gantry and all that stuff. It's really nice. And Cobra Commander is in shock. He doesn't believe it. So they didn't know that G.I. Joe had this.
Yo, Joe!
Now, General Hawk's like, there you are, Commander. Now, if you'll be so kind, we have a flight to catch. And Cobra Commander is stunned that the Joes have their own mobile launch space shuttle thing. And he wants to make sure that the Techno Vipers are recording as much data as possible. It's Cobra Commander and 2 Techno Vipers. We've got Mainframe and Chuckles. They're going to be going on the ship. And here we meet Payload, Captain of the Defiant, and Hardtop, the engineer and driver. They're going to be our hosts for the flight. And in a weird double entendre, Mainframe's like, pretty impressive, Payload. I can't wait to get a look at your computers. Payload says, it's not much, but we call it home. And then there's a little joke about parking it. Ha, very funny.
Yo, Joe!
And apparently Hardtop's a jerk. I think we knew that from his file card, but he didn't find a joke that Chuckles made very funny. That was the parking spot. Chuckles, it looks so, it's weird. So it looks like it's Mainframe making the joke. Well, that's the thing. No one's really drawn to spec here 100%. But it looks like it's Mainframe making that joke, and Hardtop just walks away. But then it's Chuckles who feels bad about the joke. So there's a little awkwardness there. And it's interesting. They because it's Chuckles, Chuckles is that Hawaiian shirt's great, but I think that Hawaiian shirt makes it difficult to animate in 3D because he doesn't really have it in this. That's why I'm having trouble identifying things a little bit. So they all get on board. Hawk, what do we got here? Yeah, they're just basically saying, liftoff's ready to go. We can go up. So this is, again, is another one of those moments of like, we're just having conversations for the sake of having conversations, taking up time, and lovely drawings. And there's really nice 3D work on there. They look very cool, but there's nothing happening. You could achieve this real quick and get up to space, and get a little bit more action, get another like twist in the story beat going on, and save a few pages with some of this, hey, get in, this looks great, all right, let's go find a seat kind of conversation.
Yo, Joe!
Because it continues on this one too. Now, this is being used a little bit to kind of sell the toy. Now they're crawling up into the gantry. They're saying 6 stories tall, around 200 tons. There's no launch site. We make our own. This is kind of like Toyetic selling the thing to the kids kind of conversation. And I don't begrudge it that. I don't mean it like that, but it's just taking up some story time. So we have to see them walk in. We have to see them sit down in their seats. It's all this super slow. Roger, payload. All right, let's go. T-minus, fasten your belts. Thanks for flying Air Joe. Again, well-written dialogue. Don't get me wrong. Pacing.
Yo, Joe!
This is a cool panel. It's the space shuttle, or they're taking off, the whole jet boosters firing, lots of smoke, lots of explosions, lots of layers to the explosion. It looks really pretty sweet, actually. And then that's cut over with the mystery guy comes back. And one of his soldiers is saying they've achieved liftoff, Supreme One. And he finds that fascinating. So apparently the Joe's having a space shuttle was news to him as well.
Yo, Joe!
And we're into space. So everyone's shaking. Now, this is a fun panel. This is the kind of page that you expect in a story about people going into space, where everyone's shaking. You see this in every go into space story, and it's always fun. It always works. 100% always works. So I'm not going to begrudge a full page of this here. As they go into space, they're dropping the booster rockets, and then everyone's shaking. We've also apparently slipstreams here, and we're just learning that for the first time, because there's someone that says, boy, this thing may be bumpy, but it sure beats my Conquest. So that's got to be slipstream, right? But I don't think he was introduced earlier. Cobra Commander is about to lose his lunch. That's all great. That's fun. So this page I love. This page really works. We get a vomit noise from Cobra Commander as they breach the atmosphere. It's really good.
Yo, Joe!
And here we go. I'm sorry. This is the page where they separate. So now we got a whole nother page just about separating the boosters. However, it is during these multiple pages sequence where it dawned on me that this issue, as compared to last issue in the 3D process, and definitely it's a function because they're in space and there's a lot of black backgrounds in space, but they're spotting blacks a lot more in this than they did in the previous issue. If you remember, we talked about last week when they were in the jungle, there were a lot of loosely drawn plants, just kind of the outlines of the plants, and they worked. It's a total style, and it worked really well. But in this case, because they're going to be in space, there's a lot of blacks being spotted in the artwork, and I think it looks great. I think it just absolutely works. I think it really gives a dynamite pop to the pages, like all the pages. And it's not just in space that they're using this heavier style. When you go back a few pages, and one of those let's get on the shuttle pages that took a little bit, he just does really nice work with using shadows, like on the backs of Cobra Commander. There's a shadow on the gantry that breaks the page up very nicely. This feels like he learned from doing the first issue, is what it feels like. Or he absolutely knew what he was doing both times, and he just decided to go with a heavier brush, in this iteration. I don't want to get behind the head of the, but my opinion, I prefer this better. I think the heavier, because you're basically looking at, even though it's not 3D, it's red and blue, not black and white, it's red and blue, but it essentially becomes 3D when you're looking at it. And when 3D art has those heavy blacks, I think it pops so much better. When art has, I'm going to try to spit that out. When black and white art uses really nicely spotted blacks on the page, it works much better. So because this 3D essentially is black and white art, I prefer this one versus the look of the previous issue. And we'll see how next week how that issue turns out. But so far, I like this style a lot more. So they're separating the boosters here, and Cobra Commander is saying to the Techno Viper, basically, be on alert.
Yo, Joe!
This is a cool shot. It's a really nice panel. It's the Defiant cutting through the space night sky, and I think he's cutting across. I gotta be honest, I'm not sure what he's cutting across, but it looks gorgeous. The effect is he might be cutting in front of the sun, and the camera might be on the surface of the moon, like the artistic camera, might be on the surface of the moon watching this as he cuts across the moon, between the moon and the sun, on the way to the satellite. Or it might be on the moon and we're in front of the Earth, and they just didn't put the details of the Earth. Or it might not be on the moon at all. It might be on some random asteroid because looks like there's some type of land in the bottom of this panel to give it to where this camera's positioned, to give it some framework to it. But either way, it's a nice little panel. I really like it. And this choice of just doing a straight flat circle behind the Defiant, the right choice, because if you do any detail, like let's say it's supposed to be the Earth and you drew all the continents, or let's say it's supposed to be the moon and you draw all the little impact craters and all that stuff, it detracts from what the Defiant's doing. So it's a nice panel. If you're following along, I think you'll see what I'm talking about. And then we get the Joes are going out. They don't wait. Now this is where they don't waste any time. They're in space and now they're at the satellite. That's great. Is it payload? Payload's going out. Yeah, this issue, just like the previous one, they don't do a great job of reiterating names, which is fine because that is a little more sophisticated than calling someone's name every single time. But I think that's payload that's going out. He's doing a spacewalk, or they call it an EVA. Yeah, he's going EVA. And as he gets outside, Cobra Commander says, "This is our moment."
Yo, Joe!
So this another cool panel. It's a really nice panel. And Cruz does a really nice job. He did it last issue as well, of knowing when to break the panels up, so it's not a full square. And he uses like the outline of Hawk's body to kind of pop it, to break the frame. And then he uses the other Joe's bodies to kind of fill in the bottom of the frame. And then he's also doing in this issue, he's also doing a lot of insert frames, which he has on this page as well. Solid storytelling there, and great, the kind of camera angle stuff that I love, where he's working as an editor, choosing what to show you on the page instead of walking you hand in hand, like walking you through the moments of action. He's letting your brain fill in the moments of action by cutting from panel to panel. You see the guy in space, then you cut to the Joe's close-up, then you cut to Cobra Commander, then you cut to them all, and then you cut to a Joe in close-up, right? With a lot of that decompressed storyline and a lot of modern storytelling, you'll see the same talking heads, and they're drawn a little different. They might be in a different position. They might be a little different here or there, but pretty much you'll see the same 2 or 3 or 4 people in a scene in the same positions just to get out all this dialogue. He's not doing that with this. Like, he's visually moving the camera for you, putting it in interesting places to get me excited about the people that are taking the focus of the moment. That is the kind of storytelling I think a lot of modern comic books lack. They cut to giant action people flying instead of cutting to the scene of giant action people, of giant people throwing fists and things like that, right? He's cutting to the scene of what's happening here, even though he is dealing with people just standing around kind of chatting. He's moving the camera to keep it interesting. Hope that made sense. I feel like it sounded a little roundabout.
Yo, Joe!
But Cobra Commander is taking over. I'm sorry, I forgot to leave that out. I left that out. Yeah, the Cobra Commander pulled some guns. We don't really know where they got it from, but frankly, we don't care. And that's what's great. Now the pacing for that is great. I don't care where they got the guns. They obviously found them. They found them. They smuggled them. They figured it out. So on this page, Hardtop's still out there, and outside rather, and he's aware that Cobra has taken over, so he's in a spot of trouble. And very quickly though, and this is what I mean with pacing. Cobra has taken over the shuttle, and they lose control of taking over the shuttle in 3/4 of a page. They take it over on the final quarter of the previous page, and by the final third of the previous page, and so I guess in one page, 2/3 of this page, Cobra has now lost control again. In a fun way. I don't know who did that again. I'm not sure which Joe did it, because I guess it's Hardtop. He says, "Sorry, Commander, I've just activated our new damper. It cancels any non-Joe equipment. That includes any recording device you may have snuck aboard." So Cobra Commander is not able to record anything. He's also not able to use their weapons. So now they don't have any weapons, but like, that's a fun beat. Cobra takes over. What do? Nope. Joe solved it within a page. But as this is happening, there's a power overload on the Cobra satellite.
Yo, Joe!
Now we're back with that Supreme one, dude. And again, this is a panel that could have benefited from like a color distinction or something to really drive home that that's what we're looking at. But they are smart enough to say Supreme one, so that's our cue that's what we're looking at. So it's this shadow dude sitting in a chair. He says begin final phase. So while this is happening, there's multiple launch signals on the satellite, and the Joes are freaking out because they can't stop it. They don't know how to stop it, and they're not launching. They're actually going into overload, is what we learned. So Hawk grabs Cobra Commander and says, "How do we shut that thing down?" And he's grabbing him by the cuffs. Basically, we're all going to die because they're docked sort of right next to the satellite. So if they explode, they're all going to die up there. So and Cobra Commander as well.
Yo, Joe!
Unless you survive, Hawk says, unless you can survive a point blank attack, you better tell us how to turn it off. And Mainframe warns them they've only got minutes. There's more threatening going on with Hawk. He says, give my men the bypass codes, and Cobra Commander sees the error of his ways. He says and he tells them how, basically. They have to remove the main memory capsule, etc., so on. He tells his Viper to get on the terminal, enter the security codes. It's funny. It takes them longer to convince Cobra Commander to save his own butt than it did the Cobra Commander had control of the ship. Is a fun panel. So I think based on this panel, I think that was the planet Earth they were flying in front of earlier, because now you do see the Earth and you see the continents of the Earth.
Yo, Joe!
Technovipers enter the codes. In that Supreme one layer, they were seeing that something's wrong here. There seems to be some kind of interference over our circuits, Supreme one. And he says, this cannot be. The test must be, if this is just a test, it must be successful. This is just a test. But he says, I will have my victory, even if I have to do it myself. And he's reaching and he's about to press a button. I'm assuming that button's going to explode everything. So the Supreme one, to help illustrate who he is, and I don't know if it's supposed to be Destro, but he's got a high collar on, but it's not like Destro's rounded collar. He's got a glove on, but I don't see any wrist rockets on it. It looks like he's wearing some kind of cloak or big jacket or something. So that's it. As far as I know who this Supreme one is. And then the Joes, they have the Cobra code is in, the sequence has been entered, so payload can pull the cables, meaning he can cut off stop the explosive countdown.
Yo, Joe!
And he pulls those cables seconds before that mysterious dude presses some button, and he screams in anger, that it was not a success. And they're back on the shuttle. Everyone's cheering because they're all going to live, quite frankly, including Cobra Commander. Hawk is hugging Cobra Commander. That's wild. He says, give me a hug, you big monkey. That's a little weird. Although Cobra Commander says, let go of me, you big oaf. That's very funny. This is all very cartoony, which I dig. It's what I liked about this last issue too. This feels like it's got the kind of characterization or sentimentality of the cartoon, but set in the comic book world. That totally works for me. And then whoever this mysterious dude seems to have underestimated both Joe's and Cobra, he slams on the table. So whoever he is, seems that he's against both. Obviously, it seems he's against both parties. He was just lobbing missiles at Cobra. But he says, at any rate, I have more information on them now. I'm sure my next attempt to remove them will be successful. So who is this dude? Like, who is this supposed to be? We're going to find out. Or maybe not. I have no idea. And if any of you know, don't spoil it for me. I'm going to find out. So now we're back on the we're back on the shuttle. The Defiant is locking into the satellite, so they kind of hook up to the satellite, and they pull that memory capsule. The payload did. He pulled the memory capsule. He thought they could use it unless there's anything else we've left behind. We're ready to head home, Hawk. And Hawk says there's just one little man or payload, and I think it's I think it's, what's his name? Not the other pilot of the Defiant. He says, missiles are standing by. He says, Commander, your satellite is in violation of every existing agreement for weapons in space, and I am empowered by the U.S. government to dispose of it. Commander is very upset about that. And they're going to disconnect the satellite and then blow it out of the sky, shoot some missiles at it. Commander's very upset. Now, what I like about this setup is he says, you're in violation of these existing agreements, and he's authorized to blow it up, which is great because that's using that same legal theory mumbo jumbo that Cobra did to get on the thing, to get in the Defiant in the first place, saying that, you know, we're sovereign, it's our own property, you need our help, you can't just blow it out of the sky. And he's saying, yeah, okay, great. Following the rules of law and society, whatever, you're in violation of all these treaties that you're supposed to not be in violation of because you're a part of this. So because of that, I get to blow up your satellite, and you really can't complain about it.
Yo, Joe!
And it's a nice little 3-panel drift away as the Defiant shoots these rockets. And Cobra Commander is screaming, no, and we get a nice little fun explosion in the bottom with a broom sound effect. It shakes up the space shuttle a little bit. Cobra Commander is very upset about his satellite.
Yo, Joe!
And he says, this is the last I will not rest until this affront has been avenged. And one of the Technovipers says, Commander, we still have the capsule. The capsule being that memory, the memory card. And one of the Joes says, yes, Commander, all your precious information is still intact, unless we still had that damper on. In which case, it just all got erased when you blew up the satellite. Oh, no, the damper was still on. So the Joes technically don't have all this great data about Cobra, which, again, technically would have been their property. But then Cobra doesn't have it either, because when they removed it from the memory card, nothing was transferred. However that damper works, I don't know. It's a damper MacGuffin. I get it. He screams, I'll kill you. And now this is neat. They show the Defiant docking back with their boosters, right? So the boosters are reusable. So they dock back to the main booster body. And the connection to the launch vehicle is smoother than a breeze on a pane of glass. And the victorious Joes head for home. He's screaming in outrage, I'll have your heads, and they're all laughing at him. The end. And we also get an advertisement here for Laurel and Hardy's 60th anniversary. 3D Laurel and Hardy in 3D. Happy anniversary, Laurel and Hardy. We get another ad for Transformers in 3D #1. Some Battletech. Battletech ad. That's fun. Flintstones in 3D ad. And coming soon from Blackthorn and Lucasfilm, Star Wars in 3D on the way. New stories by Len Wein. Amazing. That was an 8-issue miniseries. I wonder, did they do an full 8 issues? I'm going to look real quick. Star Wars in 3D. I'm going to open up my comic-based software. Ladies and gentlemen, if you're ever looking for a good, solid software to use, Wars in 3D. Comic-based is the way to go. They did not hit 8 issues. That is ambitious. They did 3 issues, and the third issue looks like came out. Yeah, it looks like it came out in like 87. But they did 3 issues of Star Wars in 3D. I think I've come across these at some point or another. It doesn't look like I have them in my collection at this point. But yeah, so they were able to manage it, squeak out 3 issues of Star Wars 3D before this whole Blackthorn operation crumbled. And then we also get Brave Star. I know there's some Brave Star fans out there. Brave Star, Western in space, very cool. We get a Brave Star in 3D ad. Did they ever publish the Brave Star in 3D? Hold on, let's find out. Again with the comic base. Brave Star. Yeah, Brave Star in 3D. In fact, they did 2 issues of Brave Star in 3D. And I gotta say, that's Brave Star in 3D is the only Brave Star comic book. I feel like that's a property that someone should pick up and do some cool stuff with. But anyway, this isn't Joe on Brave Star. This is Joe on Joe. So man, I hope you all enjoyed this issue so much. I did. I do love it. I think it's great. I think it could make use of the space a little more. I think there could have been some more excitement with Cobra taking control of the shuttle. Just some more action in in that regard. It's pretty point A to point B to point C. And then I want to know who this mystery guy is. And quite frankly, I don't have any faith that we're ever going to find out who the mystery guy is. But we'll find out. We'll see. Or we won't find out. I don't know. We'll Google it. And you guys are great. And now you, Joe. And Joeing is half the battle.